Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Walsh, and I'm here as the chair of the Humanitarian Security Challenges Working Group. The working group is set to provide a professional framework that can be used to collectively analyze and increasingly try to generate knowledge about the complex challenges that are impacting search and rescue teams and emergency medical teams in armed conflicts and other insecure environments around the world. Today, we're here to have a discussion with one of the members of the White Helmet, who's going to be discussing the challenges that are faced by search and rescue teams and emergency medical teams responding in Northwest Syria. This has been an issue that has been top of mind over the last couple of weeks in the aftermath of the earthquake. I'm very grateful to have with me today Ammar Selmo, and he'll be speaking with us. Please, Ammar, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to participate and be part of this. The White Helmet Syria Civil Defense is a Syrian-led civil society organization dedicated to helping community in Syria. Right now, we serve more than 400,000 direct beneficiary a year, and we serve 4 million. Most of those are displaced from many parts of the country. 3 million of them living in camps. White Helmet team started in 2011. It's like a civil defense mandate and unified as a national organization in 2014. Responded to aerial and ground barrel bombs attacks, bombardment of residential area, and to fill the gap of cut of services by the government, because the government withdraw from area outside their control. There was no services, no civil defense, and there should be a civil defense. So from here it comes the idea. It came the idea for everyone like me to join and help and give a hand as neighbor, help neighbor. So we started as a neighbor to help our community. So this is the establishment, the start of the White Helmets in Syria.
Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that face search and rescue teams and emergency medical teams who respond in armed conflicts and other complex humanitarian emergencies. So as you know, I mean, when we are responding and sending teams into places that have these challenges, the response has to be very context specific. So can you tell us a little bit about the context in Northwest Syria and what makes it particularly challenging for search and rescue and for emergency medical teams to respond there?
For any rescue team in any conflict, there is an average danger to be exposed to, like to be caught in the line of fire, between the line of fire. But in Syria, the situation is different completely, because the rescue team were systematically targeted. They were the main target, as we lost 300 volunteers from the White Helmets, which means it's 10% of the White Helmets. We are 3,000 volunteers. 10% of the volunteers were killed in the double tap attacks by Russian and Syrian regime. So it was a tactic used to kill, to attack an ambulance. So we had to, for example, paint the ambulance with soil to hide the ambulance. It's everywhere. They advise us, for example, in the beginning, international organization to show the ambulance, because the party of the conflict will avoid targeting the ambulance. But that wasn't the real on the ground, because the ambulance was first target. For example, medical facility, hospital were targeted. So the most challenge we are facing is targeting the team systematically on the ground, and also by propaganda, disinformation on the media. This is the main challenge we are facing. We are the victim. We are not only just sometimes exposed to danger, but we are the victims. With the victims on the ground, we are also the victims. That's also the fear. We are divided also between the fear and the duty all the time. For example, myself, I'm not stable since 10 years. My psychological is stable for 10 years, because we are always under threat to be targeted.
So one of the challenges come up a lot when we've talked about how best to respond in these environments is the challenge that there's this trend that's happening out there, that in armed conflicts and in these insecure environments, there's an increasing disrespect for international humanitarian law. So can you tell me a little bit about, from as a third party, somebody looking in on this, when you say there's disrespect for international humanitarian law happening in armed conflicts and other insecure environments around the world, what should that mean to somebody who hasn't actually been in Northwest Syria? What do your team see on the ground, and how does this present a new challenge or an increasing challenge to these sort of responses?
Yeah, that's the main challenge, because there is no front line. Everywhere is a front line. People are not secure at anywhere. For example, in the camps near the border, where they flee all their cities, they are under danger. Hospitals, you can't just go to documentation and numbers and data about how many doctors they were killed in their hospital, where they were just treating their patients. And also the regime have legislation that even if you are a doctor helping people outside their control, you are a terrorist. You will be deemed as a terrorist if they were captured, if they were arrested, if they have the right to kill you. And that's what's the danger to all the humanitarian organizations around the world. And this could happen in Syria and could happen again. I think it happened also in Myanmar, where Save the Children were killed last year. So this could happen anywhere in the world, because they step on the humanitarian international law, and that means they paved the way, like attacking residential area in Syria. It moved to attack a residential area in Ukraine. That could happen in anywhere if we will not stand together to stop this, because humanitarian workers were systematically targeted in Syria, and they were killed and they were demonized. That's also I want to confirm that they were fighting the humanitarian organization in media, propaganda and disinformation and misinformation to justify their killing, their machine killing on the ground.
So one of the things, and you know this well, I mean, there's a challenge. I mean, we have humanitarian principles that have to be abided by, and when you're providing this aid in any environment, whether it's an armed conflict or not. But independence, impartiality, neutrality, these are extremely important. Can you talk a little bit about, as an organization operating in Northwest Syria, the challenges that you faced, both trying to uphold those three principles and the perception of how you've either been able to or not been able to uphold those principles in responding in your own neighborhoods?
Yeah, for example, one of the main principles of the white helmets is impartiality and neutrality. But you cannot be neutral with a man who dropped barrel bomb on civilian or children, and at the same time deal with him as a child who is a victim on the ground. So you cannot be neutral for both of them. The white helmets discuss this internally a lot of time, how we could be neutral with those two things. How could be neutral, for example, not to publish who is the perpetrator of these crimes, and this is under question right now. So why the white helmets is under attack, because we always in our documentation, in our figures, we show who is the perpetrator, and if we know the perpetrator, we immediately figure to the or show the perpetrator or who is the perpetrating this on the ground. And also the de facto authority, we suffer a lot from de facto authority, from factions, different factions on the ground, because all the de facto authority want to exploit the aid delivery, the services on the ground. So you should negotiate with them. You should stick to your neutrality and impartiality. You can say taking your side and just doing the great job you are doing on the ground, because you can say you take the people, you take your legality from the people. The people give you the legality, give you the power.
So, I mean, it sounds like to me what you're saying is that neutrality has been something that you've really struggled with, and you had to make a decision about whether or not you could remain neutral. And you decided that neutrality was maybe a bridge too far, but you tried to maintain independence and impartiality. And so, is that an accurate account of sort of how the white helmets have approached response in Northwest Syria?
Yes, One, as I told you, one of our principle is neutrality and impartiality in providing the services. When we provide the services, we do not ask anyone who is his political view or religion or blah, blah, blah. But neutrality towards, for example, some organization advised us not to provide, for example, information about who is the perpetrator. Just, for example, if our center was attacked, we should say in our statements one of our center was attacked, and on the reality we said Russian attacked our center. So this is the question here. Should we be neutral with a perpetrator and victims?
And so, I mean, this is obviously a big debate, right? And it was discussed in the Red Book for emergency medical teams, and it's been discussed in many places. And so there's debate on this issue, right? And you've taken a very clear position in this debate. I mean, looking back on the last couple of years and the challenges that your organization has faced because of the position you've taken in this debate, I mean, where do you see this debate going in the years ahead? I mean, do you see, as we have other incidents like Northwest Syria, these sort of environments emerge, that there's going to be a number of other organizations put in the same position as yours who are going to have to make these decisions? And do you think that the international organizations who are trying to uphold these principles will be able to do that in the face of some of the challenges that you face in armed conflict environments or not?
Actually, it depends on the organization itself, because our organization is from the ground, from the people who are from the ground. And so 300 of our volunteers were killed by, most of them were killed by double tap attacks. And we stick to the weak people. We stick to the victims. And part of our work, part of our mandate is to document war crimes against the humanity, against people, or some attacks on people. So one of our documentation and mandate is to document every war crime or every violation on civilian. So this is what make us take this side, to be neutral on the ground in providing the services, but not neutral with when we distinguish between the victims and the perpetrators.
So tell us a little bit about the consequences of this. I mean, you've taken a very clear position on trying to do two things. I mean, being a humanitarian organization responding, and then someone who's documenting human rights violations in your country. So talk about the challenges that the organization has to face as a consequence of taking these two positions simultaneously.
Yes. Actually, when we start the work to respond to attacks, to bombardment from ground or from aerial bombardment. But after that, because we have the GoPro camera, we have the professional camera, we have every possible camera to document the crimes that we are facing on the ground. So from here, it comes the idea to document these war crimes, because we are the first witnesses. We are the first one to reach a place or to respond to any place. So since we are the witnesses on the ground, we take this side to hold also this responsibility to document the crimes that have been on the ground. So we have mountain of documentation. We are right now archiving them for future justice and accountability, because not only we trying to save people from under the rubble or save people, but also to save the right of the victims. This is also becomes the second mandate of the White Helmets.
So, I mean, we recently had the earthquakes, and the earthquakes caused massive devastation, not just in Turkey, but also in Northwest Syria, as you know, and there's a lot of challenges that happened. So talk about the first 72 hours and what happened. I mean, with having a natural disaster in an armed conflict area, what was the response like on the ground? What did you see the response both within Northwest Syria, and then what was happening in the region as things were getting mobilized to respond to the earthquakes in Turkey?
Yes, the first 7 hours, I can say we were lost because we lost connection. What we saw on the ground is bigger than our capacity, bigger than what we have. We have just the 3,000 volunteers, trained volunteers. And on the ground, there was more than 2,000 building collapsed. So we were just receiving calls from civilian everywhere, hundreds or thousands of calls on the same times, but we have limited capacity to respond to. So we asked the international community from the beginning. We declare a state of emergency, and we asked the international community, the countries, the donor countries, if they can deliver volunteer or deliver teams, rescue teams, to help us, because we cannot deal with all that building on the ground, mountain of rubble in front of us. But after the second or third hours, we started to, you can say, manage all the teams. We made an operation room to manage all the teams on the ground, and we were able to intervene in most of the area in the first week. So we get the help from the individuals around the world, donate to us, and the community inside Syria, because the Assad regime, you can say, destroy the infrastructure, but it does destroy the community network, because we saw how the people in Syria wish to help us, providing us more than 200 heavy vehicles. We were in need of heavy vehicles. More than 200 heavy vehicles were delivered to us from the community. Hundreds or thousands of people, civilian volunteers, came to help us. So at the first 7 days, we were able to save more than 3,000 lives from under the rubble. And after the first week, we lost hope to find any survival, and we continue our job to dig the dead people from under the rubble. Right now, we are in the second phase of rehabilitation, of recovery, trying to help the community to survive, because life will continue, and there are more than 40,000 families right now displaced. So what is increased is this displacement, because as I told you in the beginning, more than 3 million living in camps right now. More people are need camps and shelter to complete their life.
So, I mean, as you know, one of the challenges with Northwest Syria was the inability or the challenge of trying to disentangle sort of the chronic needs on the ground after years and years of civil conflict from the emergent needs that were created by the earthquakes. So when we look out into the future and we think about the potential for a natural disaster or man-made disaster in a place that has armed conflict again, what are the lessons learned? I mean, how big of a challenge is it to disentangle in a place where you already have armed conflict? What are the chronic humanitarian needs from what are the emergent humanitarian needs, and what effect does that have on the response?
Actually, right now we should work from zero, really zero, because the earthquake turns everything upside down. The infrastructure, it was weak before the earthquake, but right now it's all destroyed. Drinking water with sanitation merged together. So hospital, schools are right now, most of them partially destroyed. They need rehabilitation. So the situation is so dire, and I know there is no good time for earthquake, but the earthquake came at the worst time ever. And during the winter, during the storms of the winters, and also during the cholera pandemics, and after the coronavirus pandemics. So the situation on the ground is, it needs a long-term solution. We know help is needed right now, aid is needed right now more than before, but also there are need for long-term solution, which is political solution for those people to return to their homes. Most of the people who were killed in the earthquake, they were displaced from many parts of the Syria. If there was a political solution, they will not be here to suffer from this, to face this.
So you talk about the needs, and you say, you know, these are fundamental needs, and there needs to be a long-term solution. But the UN system and the International Humanitarian Organization system, they have two sort of tracks, right? There's a long-term track, but there's also the immediate response to disasters that happen around the world. And so when the immediate response components get activated in a place like Northwest Syria, and you look back at the earthquakes, what were the challenges that created? Because those organizations are responding for emergent needs, not for long-term needs at that time. So how does this sort of context, how does it hinder the response or how did it hinder the response in Northwest Syria?
We criticized the UN response in Syria, and most of the people here in Syria don't trust the UN, because the UN under the bureaucracy, a lot of bureaucracy, and also you can say the experience that we faced in besieged area in Damascus, in Aleppo. It gives us a lot of lessons how the UN were unable and incapable to deliver aid to the needed people, despite their offices just 2 or 3 kilometers from the besieged area, because they have the mandate, but they did not have the responsibility. They did not have the principle, they should be more courageous to deliver the aid, because the UN did not respond at the first week of the earthquake, did not provide any help to the Northwest Syria during the earthquake in the first week, in the first 10 days, and they were waiting to just receive an approval from Assad regime to deliver the aid. And we believe the UN Security General can do everything possible. He have the mandate, he have the power to activate any mechanism, any flexible and quick mechanism to deliver the aid. He can deploy the ONDAC or deploy the Ansarak to Syria. He deployed the ONDAC in Syria regime area, but did not take the same procedure in Northwest Syria area. They said that they are unable to deliver the aid because of the road in Turkey, but that wasn't true, because we saw how the dead body from Turkey, Syrian dead body who gone in the earthquake, were arriving to the cross border. So the response was so slow. And we always, I'm a big supporter of the United Nations before I joined the White House, because no one just to support the United Nations, support the multicultural, support the humanitarian, support their principle. But their response in Syria was so slow, and it hasn't the responsibility, because the interest should be to the beneficiary, to the people, not to please the Assad, not to please the Russian.
So one of the other concerns, I mean, you've talked a lot about the concerns with the regime, the Assad regime, and with foreign actors and with the UN, but there's also been a concern in a place like Northwest Syria that a lot of different groups have the ability to politicize a response by international humanitarian organizations. And there's this concern that they can instrumentalize the response and use it for their own political or economic or social objectives. And there's a huge concern of that, of being co-opted when you go into a response and help one of the sides when you don't intend to, because you're just there to provide aid to the people. So talk about that. I mean, one of the challenges, you work with a lot of partner organizations, a lot of international organizations and governments, and you try to find ways to get people to come in and support your operations. How does this concern about the political actors on the ground in a place like Northwest Syria that doesn't have a single authority running everything? You know, you have multiple authorities competing for power, you have a civil conflict, you have all these things happening. How does that affect the international humanitarian organizations that you're trying to partner with and their willingness to come in and work with you?
Yes, the UN has offices in Gaziantep in Turkey, and they have partners inside Syria, their offices inside Syria. And right now they were able, for example, the UN, when they want, they can do that. They visited Syria many times during the last 3 or 4 weeks. They deployed many teams to Syria to assess the situation and to coordinate the aid inside Syria. Also, there is access from Turkey. There is 2 or 3 borders. They can deliver the aid through from Turkey, according to the United Nations Security Council resolution, to provide the aid. I understand your question. Any de facto authority trying to politicize the aid, but politicizing the aid in the regime area, for example, the UN did not do anything to stop Assad regime from stealing the aid, from influencing the aid, from intervening in the aid. At the same time, from Turkey, they can deliver the aid through 3 borders, and they have their partner, they have their reports, third-party reports. And I think that when it comes to transparency in Northwest Syria is more effective than transparency in the regime-held area.
So let's talk about donors and third parties, right? So a lot of international humanitarian organizations, they rely on their donor networks, they rely on their partners and key stakeholders, right? And you have your own donors and your key stakeholders as well. In an armed conflict environment or in a complex humanitarian emergency, obviously the third parties, they have a different set of calculations they have to make about supporting or not supporting responses. So when the earthquakes happened and you're looking at this humanitarian response to this emergent need, how did the environment impact the relationship your organization had with your own donors? And did it make it easier or harder for you to be able to effectively respond in that first 72 hours?
Yes. For example, the White House from the first day, all our donors contacted us, asking us about our needs on the ground and what the situation on the ground. We were so transparent with the media. If you follow the White House, we were very transparent with the media, with everybody, with the people on the ground, to tell them what's happening on the ground, what we have on the ground, and what we need to complete our job. So transparency helped us to mobilize the people in Syria, mobilize the donor also to provide the help. We were promised, and we are right now in the process to taking fund to complete the second and third phase of the response to the earthquake. So donor response was highly appreciated from us, because they delivered the aid. We know they cannot deliver for donor, they cannot deliver the teams, the equipment, the needed equipment to help in rescuing people at the first week, but it can help. It could help in the second and third phase on the ground.
So when you look at what happened in Northwest Syria with the earthquakes, what are the lessons learned, do you think, for other parts of the world? You know, places where you have countries potentially contesting internally or externally with one another over sovereignty, over spaces, right? And in the future, when we have an environment where you've had armed conflict and then you have a natural disaster, what should we really take away from the Northwest Syria case? I mean, what is the big lessons learned that we need to reflect on and try to come up with new mechanisms or new solutions to solve?
For example, in conflict area, there should be localization, support the localization, because if there was no Syrian organization on the ground, civil society organization on the ground, there will not be any response to the earthquake, good response, because the UN response after 2 weeks, after all the people died under the rubble. So if there was no civil society organization on the ground, there would be no response. The civil society organization on the ground did a great job in helping the community to lead the response on the ground and help the community to recover. So supporting localization in any area that have conflict, because local organization can do more than international organization.
So that's an interesting sort of proposition, because there's obviously, as you know, two ways of doing it, right? You develop a surge roster with international teams who can respond anywhere in the world and show up and respond, or you can invest in this local capacity so that the local community can respond. And you're saying in armed conflict environments, because of the political challenges and everything that go around with the international teams, you would recommend putting the investment on the capacity, the domestic capacity, right? And so if you go back, I mean, this conflict has been going on for years and years and years. Do you think there was sufficient capacity development in Northwest Syria for such a low probability but high impact event? Do you think it was reasonable that the world took the risk it did? Do you understand why there wasn't sufficient capacity to be able to completely respond to this at the time? Or do you think that there was a mistake that was made not investing more into capacity?
Actually, we were facing this dialogue just before the earthquake, because as White House, as Syria Civil Defense Organization, we were established to respond to attacks. And during the last 2 weeks, 2 years before the earthquake, there was a small number of attacks. Just for example, 30 or 50 attacks on a monthly basis. So donor was asking for this, why we should support you, because there was no attacks on the ground. You are 3,000 volunteers. Actually, 5% of our response was responding to attacks, because we provide another line of business like recovery, wash, shelter, and UXO, unexploded ordnance operation, and also healthcare. So the donor was always asking us to decrease the number. We were facing financial problem. We closed out more than 13 centers before just week before the earthquake. We were facing this. So the investment in our capacity, the investment in on other organization capacity was fruitful during the earthquake. The response was great. As I told you, we were able to save more than 3,000 lives from under the rubble in the first week. So that was fruitful, and that was successful story before of this investment in the capacity of the organization.
So I appreciate your focus, and I understand from your position that this is an important thing to advocate for, and investing in this. I mean, obviously, the world has become a much more complex place. There's major power competition in the world today. Again, there's a lot more needs around the world, and so you look at Ukraine, you look at Syria, you look at what's going on in Africa and other parts of the world. I mean, how are you going to sustain the support that you need to have this capacity to respond if there was another earthquake or another disaster in the future? How do you do it in this environment?
Yes, we have a strategic plan for 3 years, at least for 3 years. We have our resources. We always keep resources in-house to continue doing the job we are doing. And also we trying to reach more donors, more people around the world help us. The response were bigger than and more quickly than the donors themselves. So we're trying to advocate to stop killing the civilian inside Syria, to end the war, and to support the 4 million who are most of them displaced in north of Syria. So this is our mission now until we have the stability in Syria, the political solution in Syria, justice and accountability, and safe return to the people to their homes in Syria.
So I want to end on a couple questions, practical questions, right? When you look at what happened with the earthquakes and you had to do assessments, right? I mean, everyone was trying to do assessments in Northwest Syria to try to determine what the needs were. Talk about the challenges that exist in doing those assessments, the actors who need to do the assessments, the verification of those assessments. How does that happen, or how did it happen after the earthquakes? And is there any improvement that could be made, in your opinion, about how those assessments are made in the future in armed conflicts?
Yes, right now, especially with coordination with United Nations clusters on the ground, in order not to duplicate the same things, the same work. So after 10 years of the conflict, right now there are many tools and new techniques to collect the assessment on the ground in order not to duplicate the operation on the ground. So there are great job on the ground right now, and especially in need assessment and in responding to, for example, the rubble right now, there are rubble removal. The White House until now remove more than 40,000 cubic of meter from area. So in rubble removal, there was a great coordination with all the actors on the ground in order not to duplicate the operation and help each other. Everyone has his mission, his part, his operation, his line of business in order to recover and help alleviate the situation on the ground.
So we talk about classified teams, search and rescue teams, and also emergency medical teams. So white helmets, I mean, you obviously have capacity to do a lot of things, right? Why haven't you invested in having your own classified emergency medical team and meeting international standards? Well, what is the obstacle to being able to develop an WHO level classified team?
Yes, we have our protocols. We have our training center. We were before in the first 3 years of the establishment of the White Helmets, we were moving to Turkey to have the training. But after that, we established our training center. We have TOT people to keep training the volunteer on the ground. And right now, yes, we are trying to develop our system, develop our training, our books, our training books to reach the international, especially in SARAG, the Search and Rescue International Organization. So yes, we are in the process of that.
So I want to end just with sort of your own outlook of where this goes from here. I mean, you've seen the challenges on the ground with the earthquake response, and you know about the long-term challenges in Syria. When you look at sort of where we're at right now, weeks out from the earthquake and trying to understand where this goes from here, what do you expect is going to happen as a consequence of Syria, if anything, in the international community? And how do you think it's going to affect the search and rescue and emergency medical team responses?
Yes, by providing equipment, by providing vehicles, also collaboration with the teams on the ground, because we during the earthquake we were not able to use all the equipment because we don't have I'm sorry, we don't have enough equipment to be used on the ground, especially the advanced equipment like thermal camera or dogs or other equipment. So we need the help from the international community to facilitate this equipment. Some equipment, when we requested for, they told us that this equipment could be used for military cases, military issues. So they did not provide us this equipment. Right now, we are asking for more equipment, more vehicles for future disaster or any conflict, as you said.
And do you expect to receive what you've asked for?
Yes, because we are right now in the process of you can say purchasing or having this equipment to Syria at the next 2 months.
Okay, so I just wanted to end. I mean, one of the challenges with the future of trying to deploy these teams, international teams. So you're the domestic team, right? But you're looking from the international perspective of the partner organizations that you want to come in and to assist you. You've talked a lot about how you believe there's a need to invest in this domestic capacity. What role do you see for international humanitarian organizations in the future? What role do you want them to play? Let's say that there is an investment in this domestic capacity. Do you still see a role for the international humanitarian organizations to play if that happens? And if so, what role do you want that to be?
Yes, we see they have a role in the future to develop and train the domestic rescue teams for more collaboration. And we still, you can say we are students, so we need to learn more about search and rescue. We have the experience from our mission, our response, but we still need more from the international community to have the standard search and rescue international team.
So this knowledge transfer that you're talking about, the skill building and all of this, do you see that would that happen within Northwest Syria? Or would that need to happen outside of the country?
Maybe outside the country, in Turkey.
So what does that mean for other conflict areas around the world? I mean, access has been a huge issue, obviously, into Northwest Syria, right? So if you don't have access, and it's very hard for you to get your people out of the country to get that training and to get that capacity building, right? So we talked a lot about access in Northwest Syria. It was a huge topic of conversation in the first weeks after the earthquakes. What did we learn then from access? What needs to change with access? How do you make sure that there is access into places where humanitarian organizations need to respond in armed conflict environments?
Actually, this must be changed because no people should be left alone to deal with their disaster. Access, I know this is a problem, especially political problem or legislation problem, but access shouldn't be a problem. So knowledge should be shared with rescuer, because this is a matter of saving lives. To save lives or not to save lives, this is a matter of saving lives. So people will die if we will not change this issue. So we are suffering of this issue, access and the political problems, and the border and the legal thing. So this should be changed to knowledge should be shared and access should be I mean, we should change this because people will die if we will not change this.
Well, I'm really grateful for you making the time. I mean, obviously, this is a case study of very serious proportions. We understand that this has been going on for a very long time. You've been front and center in all of this, so you understand what it looks like to be a search and rescue team that's responding in an armed conflict environment. I'm really grateful you made the time to share your reflections on this with everyone, and I look forward to seeing the feedback that we receive on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.